This freshwater pump broke months ago. Now the next question is how to empty 200 liters of tank with only a hand pump. I have this scrap wood left over from the dumpster in New Zealand. There's always a cheaper method. You just don't get to use as many pretty shiny stainless things. I'm filling in all these holes today with the first coat of epoxy. This first application, it'll dry bulged in. That's just how it works. It's more just filling the hole to give the next round of epoxy something to back up on and stick to.
So that's my my Ruger 22, and this is the Ruger 308.
This is kind of all the tools that I own, which feels like a lot when they're in the box. So we're back at the GEC, 2 flights later and a taxi ride. Spin her up, see what it looks like.
It looks clean after months of rain.
Yeah, I think it's been raining every day here. Oh, look at this, they decorated.
No way! Tinsel and tubs. You got some free line there?
This is all gifts. We're in the process of unpacking all of my stuff, all of Dan's stuff, and then just kind of reorganizing everything. This is what it looks like. Gecko!
Might need a bigger boat.
Andy and Oscar gave us that awesome tarp, which is allowing us to keep the center hatch open, and they also gave us a bunch of extra line and shot cord, which I'm already have plans to replace things with, and we've managed to rig up a cover for the bow hatch so that if it's sprinkling we can leave it open. If it's really coming down we have to close it like just now. So you guys remember Andy from my last episode. Him and his sons Oscar and Max looked after Gek while I was gone, and Tracy, his wife, is a whiz with a sewing machine, so she sewed me, that is such a hard thing to say, the tarp that went over Gek's so that we could have the hatches open while it rained, and she was also generously going to take my sail cover, which is in dire need of repair.
Right, see these bits? How do you want, do these go around the stays or the lazy jacks? Or?
No, you know, I think this is like a retrofitted sail cover because I don't have lazy jacks.
Right.
So I think this just needs to all get...
So you just want that sewn up?
Yeah, I think it must have, at one point it looks like it did go around something. And then someone put this on and it just came off. Actually, it looks like they almost just... No, I guess all the stitching came out.
Right,
they just glued it on.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's good for going around the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
so
it'll get you halfway around, I guess.
Well, yeah. Well, it has, yeah. So we'll stitch that up. Can rebuild it. It can be done. So.
Oh gosh.
No, that's okay. So this bit here.
So this bit should be attached. Yeah. So that's just a flap.
Okay, so that goes on there.
Yeah.
Right, done deal.
You know what, I bet when someone remade this they didn't use UV thread, because all of the original stuff is still together and then all the new stuff is falling apart.
I ordered 2 meters of this stuff. I got it up from Sydney. Black.
Oh, amazing.
So, yeah, we don't need it. All our stuff's blue, so you can have that.
Thank you, that's so awesome.
So I had a look
Today, Dan and I are just continuing with the organizing. So today's project is the quarter berth. Dan cleaned all the mold out with vinegar, and what I'm doing now as a project is, now that we have 2 kite boards to hang up, the system that I made for hanging my one isn't quite strong enough. I have this scrap wood left over from the dumpster in New Zealand. We're gonna cut little cleats out of this because it's hardwood, it's really nice. So when I was refitting my boat, I put some fittings in and I saved the cores. So this is the core of the deck, and I love having this because whenever I'm trying to do a project, like screw something up into the overhead, I take this core out and I stack these 2 things together, and then I can go into my little screw area and pick a screw that goes exactly the right amount into the, like halfway into the balsa core, but not penetrating any of this. Where you can see these lines hanging down right now, that's the old ones that I've sort of left in place because they're measured out at the right spacing. So instead I'll put a cleat on the overhead on each side and then attach lines between the 2. Dan also has 2 kites and a kite board, so we're trying to find space for all of that in the quarter berth. This is just a little cleat that we put on, and I drilled a hole through here, so the string will go through this. this.
Lovely.
Tie it in a little loop, and then I'm gonna use this soft stuff because we don't want something like this to chafe through the boards because they're gonna be jiggling a lot, and tie this to this and then make a little understrap. So this side is adjustable with a little carabiner, and then the back of the boards, we just made this a permanent line between the two anchors because realistically the quarter berth is always going to be full of stuff, so we're not going to be able to come back here to do an adjustable line. I thought about doing a bunch of fancy hardware, like I had these stainless steel little loops that I could drill into the wood, but then you're using a stainless steel loop and 2 screws, whereas if you just drill a little hole through the wood to put a loop of rope through, you're not using any hardware besides a piece of rope. So that's why I chose to do it that way. There's always a cheaper method. You just don't get to use as many pretty shiny stainless things as otherwise. And now we have both the boards really securely fastened up here. Today is the long-awaited chart table project. So Dan is going to start taking this guy apart, and we already have plans for all the wood. We want to recycle it and use it for various little shelves on the deck. Once this is off, we're going to have to paint behind it. We have the table out. Dan's currently tipping all the sawdust from it into the water, and this is the space now. Feels way bigger. So while I'm at it, I think I might paint this white too. And then this is just this was when my dad and I were working on the boat, and we needed to put all the wiring behind here, so he just cut a little access hole, and then I never covered it up with anything, but I do have plans for that. So I'm filling in all these holes today with the first coat of epoxy. What I've done is taken painter's tape and gone behind and taped each of these ones off so the epoxy doesn't push through. Cleaned it with acetone. And now I'm going to make up some epoxy glue with the colloidal silica. This is also what I use to fill in all the blisters on the bottom of my boat. Mix that up, gloop it in with this, and then use this nice flat edge to scrape it straight. This first application isn't going to, it'll dry bulged in. That's just how it works. And then it's the second go around that's really important to get it nice and straight and smooth. This one is more just filling the hole to give the next round of epoxy something to back up on and stick to. For my mixing container, I just had this old thing of vinegar that I threw out because I used it up today. And I've just, I have one paint stick that I just cut into tiny little pieces so that it lasts longer, because you know paint sticks, very expensive items. Over here we just have some carrots. They have nothing to do with what I'm doing next to them. Dan is continuing the work on the chart table project, so I double filled all the holes with epoxy, and then he went in, I gave him some 120 grit to just smooth out over all the epoxy bumps, and then he scuffed the whole thing up with 220, and now he's just taping to prep for painting. We're going to paint all of this white. Doing that, I am editing. I have a suite set up in the cockpit, so Andy, who is my dock neighbor down here in Townsville, has hooked us up with so many things, a fridge and a fan. So this is our meat fridge, and then I have this huge fan. We're plugged into shore power, and I'm just sitting here in the shade while I edit with the giant fan. And then Dan, who's actually doing physical labor, somehow ended up with the tiny cabin fans. Okay, it's paint time for this little corner, and we don't have a paint stirring stick, so Dan had a cool suggestion, a la Gecko, and we're just putting a glove over a thin piece of trim to use as the stirring stick, which is excellent. And then I'm just using just a foam roller and a tiny little rolly guy. And this is all left over from when I painted my overhead. I also have an equally tiny rolling tray, which I'm just going to cover with this plastic bag, and then we are good to go. And the paint is this one, which I also used on the overhead. This is just the primer, 2-in-1 primer and undercoat for 1-part finishes. That's what we're going to use there. It's just been sitting since New Zealand, so we just need to give it a good stir, hence the heavy-duty trim stirring stick. I have plans to convert this space into an area for hanging some of my spare lines and put a little garbage can in the corner, which will be more easily accessible than the one under the sink. So yesterday Dan was painting this area and we were cleaning up, and I just went to go secure the lid of the paint that we're using by hitting it with the back of a screwdriver, and it was here, and it was on top. This is not paint, this is calamine lotion because it's really buggy here. And as I hit it, I guess there was a lot of wet paint that was still around the rim, and it went everywhere, like into the quarter berth, all over Dan. Dan's making us breakfast right now, and he just found that there's paint in the sink.
More paint. More paint. That's a lot of paint.
That's a lot of paint. Is that even? I don't even know.
For sure paint.
At least it's in the sink. This freshwater pump broke months ago. I tried to order a spare part for it and it never came in before I left, and this is a rebuild kit. This basically converts it from the old style to the new style. So I put this on and it still didn't work. And then we sort of troubleshot a bit more and we discovered that there's a ball in here, which we knew about because we take this apart, but there's also a ball in here, and what was happening was that a bunch of pressure was building but it wasn't really releasing. So I figured it had to be the ball in here that wasn't moving. So we just went in with our really professional tools, a chopstick and a screwdriver, and just gently tapped on the chopstick with the screwdriver. And it popped the ball out and released it. So now we're gonna put this back together and see if it works. I filled both tanks before I knew that the pump didn't work, and then I had to leave, so I left both tanks full of water for 3 months, and they are absolutely disgusting, so we have to find a way to empty those. First we'll see if this pump works. Moment of truth. Oh, it sounds like it's supposed to sound. We haven't had a freshwater pump for the past 2 weeks, so this is really exciting. So, the pump works, and now the next question is how to empty 200 liters of tank with only a hand pump, which we really don't want to do everything by hand, plus you're just pulling all the gunk through the lines. Yeah, so our thoughts were if we could get an electric bilge pump hooked up to the line, it could just draw it all out. I do have a spare one, which I need to take everything out of the lads, get behind the engine, unwire, unplumb it, bring it up. Maybe it wouldn't even fit in the lines because who knows if they're the same size. We can't get the tanks out full because they're just insanely heavy, and yeah, there's no way.
Well, the brake can't take that strain.
I don't think so, and there's just, yeah, that's impossible. That's way too much maneuvering that. Yeah. So, the mystery continues. So we've managed to get a surprise siphon. I'm not sure how long it's gonna last. This is the line that runs from the forward water tank all the way aft underneath the settees and clicks in under the sink where there's 2 valves where I can pick between the front water tank and the aft water tank. Right now we've managed to get a siphon going. Alright, so we've got the freshwater pump going. We have the tank drained, so next we're going to disconnect all the hoses and take it out. Bring it onto the dock. It doesn't have an access port, but this hole is pretty big. We're just gonna spray it with a hose and try to get as much of this cleaned out as we can before we put it back. Then we're gonna put it back, fill it with some water and bleach, and let it go through the lines so that the hoses, this is a really long hose run, so that they can have some cleaning as well. And then the tank is set to go for drinking water.
So changing the water tank's really easy. You just disconnect the hoses, they just pull right off. You just kind of take off the hose clamp and then it just slides right off, absolutely no problems.
Yeah.
It's really easy to remove, and it's totally worthwhile doing.
So we have the forward tank out, and I've rinsed it with bleach water a bunch of times on the dock, and it's drying on the dock. That's the little space where it was. The next thing we did was try to flush the aft tank, which is under there. Because the back tank is a water bag, we couldn't create a siphon to empty it out. So what we did was we decided to extend the hose that normally runs from the water bag to this locking system by taking a piece of the hose from the freshwater rain catch, putting it on to the end of the aft tank's little twiddly knob, and attaching it to what normally is the saltwater foot pump. We just closed the saltwater seacock, so now we can flush the aft tank through by just using it to wash the dishes, because we don't want to do dishes in the icky marina water anyway. And this way it'll maybe take a week or two to flush the bag a couple times, but it's just a lot easier to do it that way, and it works just as well in the long run. It's another day of working on the boat, and I'd like to introduce the newest member of the family, which is this very necessary giant insulated French press. them. I want to show you something I did yesterday. So we flushed out the freshwater tanks, and I think I've already mentioned, but yesterday we have moved the aft tank into the saltwater foot pump, but there is a problem because normally there's a line that goes between the front water tank and the aft tank, and right now it is creating an airlock because it doesn't have anywhere else to go. And this is kind of causing problems with using the freshwater pump in the forward tank. It's not really getting enough suction. I was trying to find something that would fit in it to block it off, and I found that this Sharpie, the tape is just to keep the cap on so I don't want to draw all over the inside, but the Sharpie fits perfectly inside of the hose, so I just put a little hose clamp on it, and the Sharpie just fills up the space really nicely. So that's the fix of the fix du jour. So another thing that Andy has given us is this bottle of de-ruster, and Dan has taken all the tools out of my little toolbox and spread them out here on the dock just to kind of see what needs rust busting, what we're going to keep and what we're going to throw out. So Dan's continuing to work on the tools today. We ran out of daylight. This is kind of all the tools that I own, which feels like a lot when they're in the box, but when you lay them out, it suddenly starts to feel like not a lot. We're gonna go through everything and kind of identify what needs more of. Like, I definitely am short on screwdrivers. I'm definitely not short.
The rust eats the ends of the Phillips.
On Allen keys. I think I have more Allen keys than If we put them all end to end, they would probably reach the length of my bed. And we're getting a new little tub for the tools to live in because this one's got some epoxy resin in the bottom of it. But just one part, so it will never harden. I don't know, I just use Tupperwares. You don't need anything fancy that says tools on it and costs 10 times as much. Of course, not everything we're doing here in Townsville is work. We have also managed to make some friends. Rich and Mel are Townsville locals, and they reached out to me when I first got to Townsville with Tiga and my cousin Julia, and since that moment, Dan and I have become very good friends with them. And tonight we are going over to have dinner at their house. Rich and Dan both have a love of cooking and working as professional chefs in common, so they have spent the day shopping for food while Mel and I spent the day, you know, just being debaucherous mostly, and they're cooking us up a giant enormous feast at their house.
Cheers to the oysters. We've got some freshly dressed oysters and some baked oysters and some smoked sauce, and then what we got going on over here, chef?
We got a cruising snapper.
Look at that, on the smoker. We're firing ourselves at 170. We've got some hickory smoked chips, fresh oysters. Such excellent hosts. Hey Odin, how you doing? Big camera guy. Oh, look at that. So, Rich is the official tosser of the night.
I am.
And because it was the weekend and we were all getting along so well, we decided to take a little holiday from Geck and spend the whole next day hanging out at Rich and Mel's house, which of course culminated in another fabulous meal and some surprisingly American activities. We're playing with guns, which is super American. Y'all can buy this shit over here.
That's my my .22 22 rifle.
This is crazy.
So good for rabbit hunting and
what kind of rabbits are you hunting?
up to 200 meter target shooting is quite handy.
That's a crazy gun.
So it's a Ruger. It's an American gun. I need to shoot American guns. So, so that's my my Ruger 22, and this is the Ruger 308 in an AR-15 rack. They're not semi-automatics. They're just bolt.
It's got legs on it.
But yeah, it's a Scorpion bipod.
Do they share legs?
Yeah, you can.
This one's legless.
Yeah, no, depending on which gun I'm shooting at the range at the time. But this is 308. Shoots out really well at about 1 kilometre.
Looks like this, I think. I've seen it in the movies.
No.
Where would you put the bullets if you had them in it?
The bullets go in a magazine, just in the bottom here.
Oh.
And then you'll have a bolt action.
That was me adjusting the stock. Did you get me adjusting the stock?
Oh,
I
yeah,
can do
no,
it again.
let's do it again.
Yeah, you ready?
Ooh.
That's stock in. That's stock out. Not an expert, but.
So could you just have one of these on a boat instead of binoculars?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That would be cool.
A monoscope.
Monocular. We got meal number 2. What's going on here?
So the potatoes are in, pre-roasting, so we'll just have a little cheeky.
This is all stuff Rich has prepped before we arrive.
Rich has done this lamb shoulder.
Ooh.
Oh, if cameras could catch smell, Rich, holy.
Yeah, we're looking at your handiwork. How long have you had this in?
Oh, that's
Just bubbling away.
6:30. So it's been since 10.
Oh my
this morning,
God,
so
that's
8.5 hours.
Wow.
If the camera can catch how soft that is, I mean. So, the thing about the thing is oh, that is a delicious carrot.
Caramelized purple carrot.
Dan and I are bringing down the tone of the evening by bringing over what Australians call goon to offset all the amazing food and drink that Rich and Mel have. Mel's just tidying up the gun. I just saw you walking through the door with the gun in your hand. Like, oh yeah, no big deal.
We are cutting string off our rolled and bone lamb legs.
And this,
We were going to slice it, but then when you've broken the collagen down and all the fat's nicely cooked in, and you just pull a whole shoulder with 2 forks.
that is crazy.
And
I really want to set those American bear claws. That's what I want.
Oh, do you guys hear that? We'll put the address in the
if
bottom.
any true American can help our friend out, he's in search of some bear claws. And
We're not talking about the pastries.
He'll put them to good use. What a dinner.
Thanks for watching this week's episode. Stick with me for even more intense, in-depth rebuilds next week. I'll be doing some carpentry projects, recycling the old wood from the chart table and building some new shelves and tables and stuff around Gek to make her even more space efficient and homey. And also join me in welcoming Dan to his time he's going to spend on the Gek the next 8 months. He is trapped in my tiny little boat. Thank you to my patrons who are supporting me and helping me make this trip possible. If you'd like to become a patron and receive exclusive snacks in the weeks that I don't put out full-length YouTube, because I put out YouTubes every other week, patrons get videos every week. You can join me on my Patreon, patreon.com/windhippie. And for one-time donations, I have a PayPal, paypal.me/windhippie, and merchandise, all links below. And thanks Tish for always reminding me when I need to do another upload and helping me get them on YouTube. This edit comes to you from the very cold Darwin. When the south winds blow here, it gets really chilly, so I'm wrapped up in a pile of blankets editing on my laptop, and it's just so different from the Townsville footage I was sifting through, where it was just insanely hot and I carried Fernald the fan around with me all day long. Couldn't be separated from him. He was my dearest friend there. Anyway, thank you guys for your comments. I love reading them. And patrons, I'll see you next week with a snack, and YouTubers, I'll see you in 2 weeks with another full episode.